Welcome to Our Issues Birmingham. Today's guest is Major General Givhan, who is very much involved at Troy University here in Alabama, but also quite the military expert about this country and global affairs on both sides. So we're going to talk with him and hopefully to educate ourselves on some things we've never probably thought of before. So Major General Givhan, take it away.
Yeah, Tommy, so great to be on your show. Thank you for having me. And I'm coming to you live from Troy, Alabama, where I'm the Senior Vice Chancellor for Advancement and Economic Development at Troy University. I've been here about 6 years. Before that, though, I spent 33 years in the United States Air Force, going around the world. I'm an Alabama country boy, originally from Selma area, a farm west of there. But I always wanted to do three things. I wanted to serve my country, I wanted to fly fast jets, and I wanted to see the world. And the Air Force delivered on all three of those. And I was very fortunate during my career to be able to go all over the world, participate in some incredible historical moments, the fall of the Berlin Wall, Desert Shield, Desert Storm, Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan, and still come home to Alabama and Alabama's International University, Troy University, where I'm currently still enjoying bringing all cultures together and listening to a lot of different points of view.
Well, you were introduced to me via telephone and internet and email by Captain Bill Barnes, who did not one but two shows with us about World War II. And the reason we did two shows is because I asked him, what happened? How did we end up in World War II? And he said, before I can tell you that, I got to tell you about World War I. So as a consequence, about 3 days later, we got to World War II. Now, unfortunately, you have just made me aware that Captain Barnes died within the last few months from natural causes peacefully in his sleep. So to his family, we extend our deepest sympathies. You spoke to me about flying fast jets. One of our guests in the past, and you can see it on YouTube, was Ed Yielding. And again, Captain Barnes put me on Ed Yielding. And that story is absolutely fascinating. I get chill bumps thinking about how fast he got from West Coast to East Coast at 84,000 feet. So top that if you can. Have you flown that particular airplane?
No, he flew the SR-71, the Blackbird, and Ed is a friend of mine. He and I share a couple of things. We're both Troy University graduates. We both got masters from Troy University, both Air Force pilots. And he flew the SR-71, as said, the Blackbird, and holds the world's speed record, world fastest man. And we celebrated that. I brought Ed to Troy, and he was our guest of honor for the Military Appreciation Day game at Troy University. And we just had a great time with him. I keep in touch with Ed, great American hero. And the interesting thing, you talk about sharing things with people, Bill Barnes, whom you mentioned, I was talking to, giving a presentation to the Birmingham Rotary Club. Bill Barnes was there, and he came up and we started chatting, and we discovered that we both had gone to Swanee undergraduate. We both had been Sigma News there, and we both had been Air Force pilots. However, we were separated by quite a large gulf there, about 30-something years
he was in
between the
his
times
90s.
that we'd both done those things. But
well,
I love finding those connections.
Well, you've seen a lot, obviously, and it's interesting to me to hear your perspective historically of where we are with relations with all of the countries and how it has evolved, I guess, from the Cold War up until where we are now. I think that's in your purview of activity. So
Yes.
you're not going to have time to get to all of it in the next couple of minutes, but you can at least get us started and tell us where are we these days with the rest of the world in terms of our military relationships.
Yeah, that's a huge one. Of course, something I'm passionate about and have lived a lot of history there. As I said, I captained in Germany when Germany was still a divided country. I flew F-15s when any aircraft from the Eastern Bloc, Warsaw Pact, or the Soviet Union at that time would cross the border. We would scramble in our F-15s to intercept them. Only a little while after that, I was still in Germany. Berlin Wall fell. I was shoulder to shoulder in the Marktplatz in Nuremberg, Germany, with East Germans pouring across the border. And so I've really seen this whole relationship evolve over time. And I continue to participate, even though the relationship with Russia has deteriorated. I continue to participate in a dialogue that involves an unofficial American delegation meeting with an unofficial Russian delegation on usually twice a year, called the Dartmouth Conference.
Well, hold that thought, and we'll go into it a little more in depth when we come back from break. I'm with Major General Walter Givhan. He also goes by Waldo. I like, it's a lot less words. We'll be right back. Don't go away. This is Our Issues Birmingham. Welcome back to Our Issues Birmingham. We were talking before break about the Dartmouth Conference, you call it, I believe?
Yes, the Dartmouth Conference.
And you use the expression back channel. So that sounds kind of clandestine, and I suppose it is. But this goes back to Eisenhower, to Kennedy, and forward, correct?
Yeah, in the Cold War initial stages, especially, things had sort of, to continue that metaphor of cold, they had frozen between the countries, and there really was not a lot of progress being made in official channels. So the concept was, what about opening a back channel or an unofficial channel where you citizens talking to, in this case, Soviet citizens, but Soviet citizens of influence and U.S. citizens of influence who had, participated in government or held positions in business, finance, military, that sort of thing, but retired. And so this was instrumental during the Cuban Missile Crisis in providing yet another channel of communication so that things did not get any worse than they were. And they figured very positively in resolving that crisis. Those talks have continued over the years. They're no longer held in Dartmouth as the first one was. They're held sometimes in Russia, sometimes in the US. And for about the past 5 or 6 years, I've been privileged to participate in those talks, which have been necessary because in about the last 6 years, of course, we've seen our relationship with Russia deteriorate on the official side. So it's been very important for us to continue doing what we can on the unofficial side to maintain those channels.
So let's try to get more current. Of course, I would like people to hear what's really going on as we come out of the last 4 years and go into the next 4 years. And I don't know whether you need to go back beyond the last 4 years, but certainly the last 4 years were different than any other period in history, I would think, with relations with other world powers.
Yeah, I think you could say that the international order that was put into place in the wake of World War II really was shaken or questioned during the last 4 years. Alliances, the NATO alliance, for example, called into question. a lot more unilateral actions being taken versus multilateral in coordination with our allies and other countries. Some of the monetary system coming under strain as well. All of the things that we'd really worked hard to put into place after World War II, again, with the whole idea of we can't let this happen again. We can't, let things degenerate into a worldwide conflict. But a lot of that being called into question, and as I said, many unilateral actions taken. I think the current administration has signaled that they're more inclined to go back and put more faith in those alliances like NATO, try to do things more multilaterally as an approach to foreign policy.
Well, who do you see as the biggest threat to our country? And it may not just be one place.
No. I mean, I think as far as threats, security threats, you can argue in terms of the players, the countries, as you say. You can argue in terms of situations that we might find ourselves in, or non-state actors that we might have to deal with. If we're looking at this through the traditional lens of competition among the powers, then obviously, China is the key strategic competitor that we're looking at right now. Now, as a strategic competitor, that doesn't mean enemy. I think we have to be frank. At times, our interests are directly opposed to one another. But at the same time, our economies are incredibly intertwined. So in that way, it differs from the old Cold War sort of competition we had with the Soviet Union, because there wasn't that kind of economic connection. Here, very much an economic connection. And so there are a lot of things, that we, like it or not, we have to cooperate with China on, and they have to cooperate with us. On the other hand, there's other cases where we find ourselves at odds with them. Russia, as I talked about earlier, has continued to be a competitor, and they're insistent upon their voice being heard and that their interests being respected on a world stage, as they've made clear by their actions in Ukraine and their threats towards other places. And so we've, found ourselves again at odds with the Russians in many cases, at the same time that we do have cooperation with them on many fronts, although not the economic kind of ties that we've had with China.
Yeah,
so it's
that's what
a
I was gonna
different kind
ask.
of a landscape, and you still got those non-state actors, terrorists, other groups that would span bound across borders and are more connected to movements and ideologies. So no shortage of things to keep international relations enthusiasts involved.
A lot of moving parts, shall we say.
Very much so.
All right, we're going to take a break in just a minute. I want to go into your experiences in Afghanistan most recently, and our plans, I think, to either pull out of there or stay there. I'm not sure anymore where we are with that. In any event, this is Our Issues Birmingham. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Our Issues Birmingham. I'm talking to Major General Givhan, who is a walking encyclopedia of international relations and has a lot to offer, not just our state, but our country. And again, thank you for your service and sacrifice to our country. Afghanistan, you developed or were involved in the implementation of an Afghani Air Force, I suppose.
Yeah.
I never knew they had an Air Force. When we see the Lester Holt at night, we don't see them flying airplanes. We see all this rock and people throwing rocks and bombs going off and people exploding themselves, walking into restaurants. Explain the dynamics on a rather basic level of the Afghanistan issues as it relates to the Middle East and Israel and the things that are going on over there, and where we fit in.
Yeah, I spent a year in Afghanistan, 2008, 2009. My mission, I was leading the team that was rebuilding the Afghan Air Force. And yeah, they've had an Air Force actually since the 20s in various sorts. And they really need it. If you look at that country, it's forbidding terrain, long distances, roads aren't good, almost no railroads. So air. How do you get around? You get around by air. So whoever has an air force or at least an air capability has an advantage. And the interesting thing that we did in that particular case is with a war going on, we thought, well, we need to get them in the fight in a hurry. So rather than, trying to take a long time to sell them U.S. equipment and then train them in U.S. equipment at that point, now the policy has changed since then, we said, let's buy them what they know. Let's buy them Russian equipment because they had been equipped by the Russians in the 50s, 60s, 70s. We'll learn how to fly the Russian things, aircraft, and so that we can fly with them and we can work together on this. So it was a really creative approach. So I found myself, I'd learned to shoot these things down, but here I was flying Russian turboprop transports, AN-32s, Russian utility helicopters, Mi-17 HIPs, and attack helicopters, Russian attack helicopters, Mi-35 Hinds, with the Afghans. Really with a primary mission of mobility around the country, but evolving into an attack capability to support their own ground forces. In Afghanistan is that traditional, it's the great game, that's been going on since the 19th century when Britain and Russia really vied for influence in Afghanistan. We really took the Russians, or the British place in that game against what was the Russians, obviously, and we figured in their withdrawal from Afghanistan in the 80s. But we've come back in and it's been a rocky road, but we've continued to be responsible for essentially keeping that country going with a minimum amount of force.
Under our new administration, juxtaposed to the last 4 years, what do you see being the plan going forward from your perspective that's different than it was in the last 4 years?
Yeah, I think the Trump administration had signaled fairly clearly or the president did, that he wanted to see
He wanted out.
us out of Afghanistan.
He wanted us out.
The Defense Department had said, we don't think it's time yet, and we think for a minimum investment of force, we can continue to provide a certain amount of stability. That conversation continues. It's not resolved even in the current administration, but as there always is when a new administration comes in, there's a reevaluation of policy, and what would be okay. What is the cost of maintaining stability here? What's the minimum level of force required from the United States? And is this the right thing to do?
So it's too soon to tell is essentially what you're saying.
Yeah, you've got to give them time, the new administration, to make its call. The signals were, though, that they were going to do nothing precipitously that was going to suddenly undercut what was going on or potentially leave partners hanging there. So they're deliberate. They're proceeding with a lot what I would call deliberate caution as they reevaluate that policy.
And very briefly, Captain Barnes described us at the beginning of World War II as being pathetic in our capabilities as an army, placing us behind, as he put it, little old Portugal. Are we okay militaristically in this country now? We were 18th, I think, back then. If we got enough to go forward.
Yeah, we've, one of the things I'm proud about is having had a chance to serve in the world's most professional, strongest military, best equipped, American public completely behind us, confident of the support of the folks whom we represent. And, having grown up in a state that, values football and being on a number one team was always a, important thing. I was very pleased and privileged to play on a number one team, the United States military. And again, having been in combat a couple of times, one of the great things was knowing that the American public was going to be behind me and that I had the best equipment, the best training in the world that enabled me to do my mission.
Thanks for being with us today. That's very encouraging to hear. This is Our Issues Birmingham. Thanks to Major General Walter Givhan, and thanks to Troy University for letting us talk to you. We'll see you next week.